Hello, my name's Martin J. Dougherty, and as you can probably tell, we've been obeying the lockdown rules. And while we've been locked up, we've been working on a new project for Mongoose. It's not a small project, it's Mercenary. And I'd like to start by looking at an overview of what the project's about. The title, Mercenary, comes from Book 4 of the original Classic Traveller rules. The very first time I played Traveller, I encountered a Gauss rifle. I'd only ever played fantasy games before. This was a wholly new experience, and, well, I remember it all these years later. And what Mercenary did back then was introduce military hardware and military characters and military stories into the Traveller role-playing game. Our version of Mercenary does exactly the same thing, but filtered through many, many years of development. My brief when I was given the project was, do Mercenary right. That sounds simple, and I think Matthew probably thought that it would be simple. Just update the previous version, add a few bits and pieces. That isn't what happened. What happened was going right back to the concept and starting again. What should be in this book? What do you need for a Mercenary Traveller campaign? What do you need to take away from it, maybe to use in other campaigns? How can we make this, well, Mercenary done right? So let's take a look at the bones of it. What's in the core box? There is quite a lot in Book 1, and at its core is a system for abstracting the actions your mercenaries take. So if you send a team off to get some supplies, you might not want to game that out in detail. Of course, if the rules produce a mishap, something's gone wrong, they've gone quiet, then that's an adventure waiting to happen right there. And this is the core mechanic throughout the whole thing. You can abstract anything you want to, but you can also zoom in and play out the results. So something went wrong on that mission and we need to extract the supply team. We need to escort the convoy. We need to get our people out of the local jail. Whatever's gone wrong, there's your adventures. It's not just battles. The Mercenary campaign is not just about battles. Of course, a Mercenary campaign will involve battles. Skirmishes, firefights, the occasional curb stomping. And the rules allow this to be resolved. And one of the things that we had to build in was the effects of all manner of situations. Can you achieve enough intelligence information to be able to make a good plan? Successful mercenaries make good plans. People who just pile in have short careers. And what happens if, for example, you achieve technological surprise? It's one of the many forms of surprise. You can achieve tactical surprise by hiding and ambushing someone. You can achieve technological surprise by suddenly rolling out in a grav tank, fighting people who didn't know that tanks can fly. What happens then? The rules cover this sort of eventuality and pretty much anything else that might happen. As an example of the mission end of things, the Travellers have got a commando ticket. And if they wanted to, they could just fly to the target and open fire. They could do that. Not a great plan. It's barely a plan at all. Or they may decide to collect intelligence on the target, make an analysis, and then make a stealthy approach, infiltrating close to the target, hitting hard, retreating to an exfil point and getting out again. And the rules cover this. They cover breaking contact with an enemy force. They cover being detected on the way in or not. And depending on how the Travellers decide to approach the target and the mission, you can end up having a wholly different experience. But a word of caution here. Smart Travellers make a plan. Those who pile right in will find the odds can stack up against them even if the opposition seems quite weak. We also covered battle plans and tactics. There is a difference, for example, between a static and an elastic defence. And depending what the Travellers decide to do and depending how aggressive their tactics are, they may well end up winning, but at the price of a lot of casualties. Now, you might say, so what, we lost some guys, but we achieved the objective. But these are mercenaries. they're professionals. They are prepared to take risks. They're not prepared to have their lives thrown away. So you can end up reducing a unit's morale by being far too aggressive in combat. Or you might be far too cautious and annoy the client, and then have to deal with the client who wants to know why you didn't do the job in the time required. So there's a balancing act here. And that's what we mean by it's not just about battles. It's about running a mercenary organization, not just today, not just in this firefight, but today and tomorrow and next week. And smart travelers minimize their casualties whilst getting the job done. So book 1 is about what the mercenary force is doing right now. Whether that is scrounging for supplies, or setting up a base, or having a firefight with somebody, or helping somebody build a road to win over the hearts and minds of the locals. It's what you're doing right now. Book 2 is about running the mercenary force, which begins, of course, when you raise the force. There is a system in place whereby you can take your character's mustering out benefits and use those to buy assets to build a small mercenary force. And you may well end up with not quite what you wanted. But that's what it's all about. That's what the mercenary campaign is about. You work with what you've got. You work towards what you want. So running a mercenary force is about solving problems. And if that problem is, how do we get past that heavily fortified position, that's book 1. Book 2 is about solving problems like, how do we get the right personnel? We would really like to have this equipment, but we can't afford it, or we don't have the contacts to get it, because that's another part of running a mercenary forces. You also need to do all the out of combat, out of ticket stuff, where you're talking to potential clients, you're also talking to suppliers for equipment. Some of that equipment comes with strings attached. You might be able to get some really good kit, but find somehow it's got you embroiled in this whole legal mess, and things are not as good as you thought they were going to be. More problems to solve. Really, that's the whole mercenary campaign. You keep solving problems until you win. So that brings us back to the core mechanic. The rules that we've created are about giving you the tools to resolve solving of problems in a way that doesn't just hand everything to the travellers on a plate, and quite often will generate new problems. And that's an important part of what we're doing here. We envisage a campaign where the mercenaries don't have unlimited funds. If you have vast amounts of money and you can field armies of grav tanks and hordes of battle dress armed infantry, well, you're going to win, aren't you? You're going to win all the time. And that actually gets boring quite quickly. We've tried to create a set of rules where you've managed to get hold of some grav tanks, but now you need some spares for them to bring them back up to full fighting capacity. And that's a whole new adventure. Maybe we could take this ticket because this supplier wants us to do this for them in return for sourcing the parts we need. And so it goes on. We keep using this term ticket. And a ticket is, of course, a mercenary job offer, essentially. One ticket is not necessarily like another, but in general, a client will say, I want a force of approximately this size, and I want this sort of job done. And at that point, the mercenaries then start having to look at, is this job viable? Is this a job we want to do? Are we okay with the ethics here? Is the client trustworthy? There's lots of questions to be asked. There's a whole lot of things to do around the ticket, as well as actually carrying out the fighting bit. And book 3 is all about this. And it gives a selection of actual tickets and some adventures associated with tickets, where what the mercenaries are doing is a backdrop for an incident which has to be played out like a typical travel game. The concept behind the ticket adventure is that not every ticket leads to a straight mercenary job. Sometimes things are not the way you expect. Sometimes you arrive to do the job and the client government's already been deposed and you have a wholly different situation. Or you might be asked to go and find out what's happened to a remote installation. They've gone quiet. Could be just a down transmitter. When you get there, it's not a stand-up fight, it's a bug hunt. The fact that these things can come out of the left field because the travellers think they're doing one thing and a different situation sprung upon them allows the referee to keep the campaign interesting and spring a wholly different kind of adventure on travellers who are maybe not expecting that. and that is a whole different gaming experience. So the 3 rulebooks in the core box deal with what your mercenaries are doing right now, and the second book is all about the administrative and recruiting and equipping end of things, which is obviously quite important, and the third book is a toolkit of tickets and jobs they might do and all the rest of it. There's everything you need there for a mercenary campaign. We also include a complete ticket, which is all about a conflict on the world of New Moscow. And that can be a simple set of mercenary jobs that you can resolve quite quickly if that's what you want to do, or it can be an entire campaign. This is something that's true of almost any ticket. If it's a very simple commando job, go there, break that. Go there, snatch those bad guys, get them here for interrogation, that's it. Then it's probably going to be quite a short mission. But most tickets have a setup phase where the mercenaries need to establish themselves, need to do intelligence work and so forth. They then have an active phase, and usually there's a wind down as well. This can be an evening session, or you could get weeks or even months out of it. The Moscow conflict has enough material in it that you could play there for quite a while. You could add extra missions. You might never ever go anywhere else. That could be your entire campaign. And this is something we've tried to do with the tickets we've created. You can play it in as much or as little detail as you want. But my brief with the New Moscow campaign was to set it up so that it was an introduction. It does lead the travellers through some of the processes of setting up the unit and becoming established and having to deal with quite a complicated local political situation and getting used to the constraints, because this is another part of the mercenary campaign. You can't solve all your problems with a fusion gun. You solve quite a lot of your problems with a fusion gun, but it tends to make new ones, and eventually other people with fusion guns take notice. So the travellers are going to have to learn, and the New Moscow conflict is all about presenting that learning curve with a little bit of guidance so that you can learn to operate your mercenary unit without landing yourself in trouble. Because at the end of the day, you're operating legally. You need to be mindful of that.